The ground shook under Jake Morrison's boots as another explosion lit up the gray sky. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to see more than 20 feet ahead. The ruins of what used to be a peaceful alien city stretched out around him like broken teeth. Jake pressed his back against a crumbling wall and checked his rifle. 3 shots left. Not good. His radio crackled with static and the voice of his commanding officer, Morrison. Fall back now. The Sindari are moving in fast. Jake looked at the blood running down his left arm. Shrapnel from the last blast had torn through his uniform and cut deep into his shoulder. His leg hurt too, but he could still walk. He had been through worse. Copy that, Colonel Hayes. Moving to extraction point, Jake said into his radio, but as he turned to leave, he heard something that made him stop. It was faint, almost lost in the sound of distant gunfire. But it was there, crying, a child crying. Jake looked around the destroyed buildings. His training told him to follow orders and get out. The Sindari were known for their cruelty. They would kill him without thinking twice. But that sound, that scared, helpless crying, pulled at something deep in his chest. Damn it, Jake whispered to himself. He moved toward the sound, stepping carefully over broken glass and chunks of concrete. The crying got louder. It was coming from a collapsed building about 50 yards away. Jake could see part of the roof had fallen in, creating a pile of debris. His radio crackled again. Morrison, where are you? We need to move now. Jake turned down the volume and kept walking toward the crying. As he got closer, he could see it was not a human child. The sounds were different, more musical, like wind chimes in a storm. This was one of the Kithani, the people who lived on this planet before the war came. Jake had seen the Kithani before, but only from a distance. They were peaceful beings who looked almost human, but with skin that seemed to glow softly and large eyes that held ancient wisdom. The war was not their fault. They were just caught in the middle when humans and the Sindari Empire decided to fight over their world. The crying was coming from under a large piece of concrete. Jake could see small fingers sticking out from underneath, moving weakly. Without thinking, he dropped his rifle and started pulling away chunks of debris. Hey there, little one, Jake said softly, not sure if the child could understand him. I'm going to get you out of there. The fingers stopped moving for a moment, then reached toward his voice. Jake worked faster, ignoring the pain in his wounded shoulder. Blood from his cuts dripped onto the concrete as he lifted piece after piece of rubble. When he finally cleared enough debris, Jake saw her clearly for the first time. She was small, maybe 6 years old in human terms, with pale blue skin that flickered with soft light. Her large silver eyes were filled with tears, and she was holding one arm close to her body. She was hurt, but alive. There you are, Jake said with a gentle smile. Let's get you somewhere safe. The little girl looked at him with those big eyes and made a soft sound that might have been her trying to say something. Jake reached out slowly, not wanting to scare her. When his hand touched hers, she grabbed onto his finger with surprising strength. Jake heard the sound of vehicles in the distance, Sindari patrol units getting closer. He needed to move fast, but the child was injured and scared. How could he carry her and still be ready to fight if needed? Jake looked at his combat gear and got an idea. He took off his tactical vest and used the straps to create a makeshift carrier across his chest. It was not perfect, but it would keep his hands free and hold the child close to his body, where she would feel safer. This might feel strange, but I need you to trust me, Jake said as he carefully lifted the little girl. She was lighter than he expected, and when he settled her against his chest in the improvised sling, she curled up like she was trying to make herself as small as possible. Her skin flickered brighter for a moment, and Jake felt an odd warmth spread through his chest. It was not unpleasant, more like the feeling of being near a fireplace on a cold night. Jake picked up his rifle and started moving toward the human lines. But walking with his injuries and carrying the child was harder than he thought. Each step sent pain shooting through his wounded leg, and his shoulder felt like it was on fire. The sound of Sindari vehicles was getting louder. Jake ducked behind a broken wall and looked around the corner. 3 enemy hover tanks were moving slowly through the ruins, their weapons sweeping back and forth as they searched for targets. The little girl in his arms made a scared sound and pressed her face against his chest. Jake could feel her trembling. It's okay, he whispered. I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you. Jake waited until the tanks passed, then started moving again. He had to take a longer route to avoid the enemy patrols, which meant more walking on his injured leg. But every time he thought about stopping, about giving up, he felt the small weight against his chest and kept going. The child's soft breathing against his neck reminded him of his little sister back on Earth. Ha! She used to fall asleep in his arms when she had nightmares. This was different, but the feeling of protecting someone smaller and weaker was the same. Jake's radio buzzed with urgent messages from his unit, but he kept it turned low so the sound would not attract attention. He could imagine Colonel Hayes getting more angry by the minute, but right now, getting this child to safety was more important than following orders. As he climbed over a pile of rubble, Jake slipped and fell hard on his side. Pain exploded through his wounded shoulder, and he had to bite his lip to keep from crying out. The little girl looked up at him with worried eyes and touched his face with one small hand. I'm okay, Jake told her, even though he was not sure that was true anymore. He was losing blood, and his vision was starting to get fuzzy around the edges. Jake forced himself to stand and keep walking. The human perimeter was close now. He could see the defensive barriers and the familiar shapes of Marine uniforms in the distance, but his legs felt like they were made of rubber, and each breath was getting harder. The little girl seemed to sense something was wrong. Her skin began to glow brighter, and she made soft musical sounds that reminded Jake of a lullaby. The warmth feeling in his chest got stronger, and somehow it helped him take a few more steps. Almost there, Jake whispered. Just a little further. But his body had other ideas. 20 feet from the human lines, Jake's legs gave out completely. He fell forward, twisting his body at the last second to protect the child from the impact. He hit the ground hard, and everything went black for a moment. When his vision cleared, Jake found himself surrounded by familiar faces. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the unit medic, was kneeling beside him with his medical kit open. Jake, what the hell were you thinking? Dr. Walsh asked as he started working on Jake's wounds. Jake looked down at the little girl still curled against his chest. Her eyes were closed, but she was breathing steadily. Her skin had a soft, steady glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. I couldn't leave her, Jake said simply. Dr. Walsh paused in his work and really looked at the alien child for the first time. His expression softened. Well, I'll be damned, the doctor said quietly. You brought back one of the locals. Jake felt his strength fading as the medic worked on his injuries, but he kept one arm wrapped protectively around the small being he had risked everything to save. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes, doing the right thing was more important than following orders. Jake woke up to the sound of machines beeping and the smell of antiseptic. His whole body ached, but the worst pain was in his shoulder and leg. He tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pressed him back down. Easy there, Sergeant. You lost a lot of blood, Dr. Kevin Walsh said from beside the medical bed. Jake looked around the field hospital tent. Other wounded soldiers lay on similar beds, some sleeping, others staring at the ceiling. But something was missing. Someone was missing. Where is she? Jake asked, his voice rough from sleep. Dr. Walsh looked confused. Where is who? The little girl, the alien child I brought back. Where is she? Dr. Walsh pointed to a smaller bed next to Jake's. The Cathani child was lying there, covered with a thin blanket. Her skin still had that soft glow, but it was dimmer now. Her eyes were closed, and she looked very small and fragile. She hasn't moved much since you both got here, Dr. Walsh said. I've been trying to figure out how to help her, but I don't know anything about her species. Human medicine might not work on her. Jake tried to sit up again, and this time Dr. Walsh didn't stop him. Moving hurt, but Jake needed to see the child better. She looked so alone on that bed, far from everything she knew. Have you tried giving her food? Water? Jake asked. She won't take anything from us. Every time one of my nurses gets close, she curls up and makes these scared sounds. But when you talk in your sleep, she turns toward your voice. Jake looked at the little girl and felt that same protective feeling from before. She had trusted him when she was trapped under the rubble. She needed to know she was still safe. Can you move her bed closer to mine? Jake asked. Dr. Walsh nodded and called over to nurses. They carefully wheeled the child's bed right next to Jake's. As soon as she was close enough, Jake reached out and gently touched her hand. The little girl's eyes opened immediately. When she saw Jake, her skin brightened, and she made soft musical sounds that almost sounded like relief. She grabbed his finger with both her small hands and held on tight. "Hey there, little one," Jake said softly. "You're safe now. I'm right here." The child sat up slowly and looked around the tent with wide eyes. She seemed scared of all the new faces and strange sounds, but she kept holding onto Jake's hand like it was the only thing keeping her from floating away. "She definitely knows you," Dr. Walsh said with amazement. "I've never seen anything like it." Jake noticed the child kept touching her stomach and making small, unhappy sounds. "I think she's hungry. Maybe she just doesn't know what our food is." Dr. Walsh brought over some military rations and a cup of water. The child looked at them suspiciously, then looked at Jake. He took a small bite of the food and a sip of water to show her it was safe. The little girl watched him carefully, then tried a tiny piece of food. Her face scrunched up like it tasted strange, but she swallowed it and took another bite. Soon she was eating slowly but steadily, never letting go of Jake's hand. "That's incredible," one of the nurses said. "She wouldn't even look at food when we tried to feed her." As the child ate, Jake noticed other soldiers in the tent, watching them. Some looked curious, others seemed uncomfortable. It was not every day that a human soldier brought an alien child back from a battle. "What's going to happen to her?" Jake asked Dr. Walsh. "I don't know. That's above my pay grade. Colonel Hayes wants to see you as soon as you're feeling better. I imagine she'll decide what to do with the child." The little girl finished eating and curled up on her bed, but she kept one hand stretched out to touch Jake's arm. Within minutes, she was asleep and her skin returned to that soft, steady glow. Jake watched her sleep and wondered about her family. Did she have parents looking for her? Brothers and sisters? Had they survived the attack? Or was she alone in the world now? Dr. Walsh sat down in a chair next to Jake's bed. "You know what you did back there was pretty stupid. You disobeyed direct orders and nearly got yourself killed." "I know," Jake said. "You also saved a life, an innocent life, caught up in a war she had nothing to do with." Jake looked at the sleeping child. "I couldn't just leave her there. You should have heard her crying. She was so scared. The other guys in your unit are calling you crazy. You know, but some of them are also calling you a hero." Before Jake could respond, the tent flap opened and Colonel Lisa Hayes walked in. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She looked tired, but her uniform was still perfectly neat. "Sergeant Morrison," she said in her commanding voice, "I hear you decided to play nursemaid instead of following orders." Jake started to sit up straighter, but Colonel Hayes waved him back down. She looked at the sleeping child, and her expression softened just a little. "Is this the alien you risked your life to save?" "Yes, ma'am. She was trapped under rubble from a collapsed building. She's just a kid, Colonel." Colonel Hayes studied the child for a long moment. "Do you have any idea what you've done, Morrison? This isn't just about disobeying orders anymore. This is a diplomatic situation now." "I don't understand, ma'am. We've been monitoring alien communications since you brought her back. The Cathani have been trying to contact us. They want to talk about getting their people to safety, away from the fighting, and they specifically mentioned a missing child." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "You mean her family might still be alive?" "It's possible, but here's the problem. Morrison, she won't let anyone else get near her. My medics tried to examine her this morning while you were sleeping, and she became so distressed that her vital signs went dangerous. The only time she's calm is when you're close, as if she heard them talking about her." The little girl's eyes opened. She looked at Colonel Hayes with uncertainty, then back at Jake. She made a soft, questioning sound. "It's okay," Jake told her. "This is Colonel Hayes. She's in charge here, but she won't hurt you." The child studied Colonel Hayes carefully, then made a small sound that might have been a greeting. Colonel Hayes nodded back to her. "She's very young," Colonel Hayes observed. "Maybe 6 or 7 years old by our standards. And she's definitely bonded to you, Morrison. Bonded Dr. Walsh has been researching what little we know about Kethany psychology. Apparently, their children can form very strong emotional connections during times of trauma. It's a survival mechanism that helps them stay close to protectors when they're in danger. Jake looked down at the child, who was now sitting up on her bed and playing with his fingers. She seemed fascinated by how different human hands were from her own. What does that mean for her? For me, Colonel Hayes was quiet for a moment. I'm not sure yet, but the Kethany delegation that's coming to get her specifically asked to meet with the human who saved her. That's you, Morrison. When tomorrow morning? And Morrison, this meeting could change everything. The Kethany have technology we could use against the Sindari. If we can get them as allies instead of just victims caught in the crossfire, it could help us win this war. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had just wanted to save one scared child. Now it seemed like that simple act of kindness might have consequences he never imagined. The little girl yawned and lay back down, but she kept holding on to Jake's hand. Her eyes were getting heavy with sleep again. Get some rest, Morrison, Colonel Hayes said as she prepared to leave. Tomorrow is going to be a very important day. As the colonel walked away, Jake looked down at the alien child who had somehow become his responsibility. She trusted him completely. And now both their futures depended on a meeting with her people. Jake had faced enemy fire before, but somehow this felt more dangerous. Tomorrow, he would have to find a way to reunite a child with her family, while possibly changing the course of an entire war. The morning sun cast long shadows across the neutral meeting ground. Jake stood near the edge of the crystal formations that marked the safe zone, holding the little girl's hand. She had been quiet all morning, but her skin glowed brighter than usual, and she kept looking toward the horizon where her people would appear. Colonel Hayes checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. They should be here soon, she said to the small group of human representatives. Remember, this is a diplomatic meeting. Let me do the talking, unless they specifically ask for Morrison. Jake nodded, but his attention was on the child beside him. She had refused to eat breakfast and clung to him all morning. It was like she knew something important was about to happen. Do you think she remembers her family? Asked Dr. Walsh, who had come along in case medical help was needed. I hope so, Jake replied. She's been through so much. I just want her to be happy and safe. The child looked up at Jake when she heard his voice. She made a soft musical sound and squeezed his hand. Jake smiled down at her, but inside he felt nervous. What if her family blamed him for not finding her sooner? What if they thought humans were dangerous? A low humming sound came from the distance. Jake looked up to see 3 vehicles approaching that looked nothing like human or Sindari technology. They moved smoothly over the rough ground without wheels, floating a few inches above the rocky surface. The vehicles were white and curved, almost like giant pearls. Here they come, Colonel Hayes said. Everyone stay calm and follow my lead. The vehicles stopped about 50 feet away, and several figures stepped out. Jake had seen Kethany before, but only from a distance during the fighting. Up close, they were even more remarkable. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Their faces were elegant and peaceful, with large silver eyes that seemed to hold great wisdom. But one of the Kethany was different. She moved with quick, urgent steps, and her skin flickered with brighter lights than the others. Her eyes searched the human group until they found Jake and the little girl. When she saw the child, the Kethany woman made a sound that was part cry, part song. Her whole body erupted in brilliant cascading lights, like a rainbow made of stars. She took several steps toward them, then stopped, as if she was afraid to come closer. The little girl saw the woman and made a happy sound Jake had never heard before. Her own skin blazed with light, and she tugged on Jake's hand, trying to move forward. But when Jake started to walk with her toward the woman, the child suddenly stopped and pressed against his leg, looking scared. That must be her mother, Dr. Walsh whispered. An older Kethany stepped forward. He was ancient-looking, with skin that barely glowed and eyes that seemed to see everything. When he spoke, his voice was deep and musical, but Jake couldn't understand the words. Colonel Hayes activated a small translation device. I am Elder Voxith. The old alien's voice came through the machine. We have come for the lost child of healers. The woman who had to be the child's mother stepped forward. Her lights were still flashing, but more slowly now. "I am Zareth," she said through the translator. "Where is my daughter? Where is little Pip?" Jake felt the child's hand tighten around his fingers, so her name was Pip. It suited her somehow. "She is here," Colonel Hayes said. "Sergeant Morrison risked his life to save her from the Sindari attack. She is unharmed." Zareth looked at Jake with her large silver eyes. "You are the human who found my child?" "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "She was trapped under some rubble. I couldn't just leave her there." Zareth's skin flickered with new patterns of light. "You were wounded in the battle. You bled to save a child not of your kind." Jake felt uncomfortable with the attention. "I just did what anyone would do." Elder Voxers made a sound that might have been laughter. "No, human Jake Morrison. Not anyone would do this thing. You have done something very rare." Zara started walking toward them again, her arms outstretched toward her daughter. But as she got closer, Pip made a distressed sound and hid behind Jake's legs. The little girl was trembling. Zareth stopped walking, and her lights dimmed with sadness. "My child does not remember me," she said softly. "She remembers you," Jake said quickly. "She got excited when she saw you, but she's been through a lot. She might just need time." Elder Vox studied the situation with his ancient eyes. "There is more here than simple fear," he said. "Child Pip, can you hear me?" Pip peeked out from behind Jake's legs and made a small sound. "She has formed a protection bond," Elder Vox said with amazement. "I have heard of such things, but never seen one between different species." "What does that mean?" Colonel Hayes asked. "When Cathani children face great danger, they can form deep connections with those who protect them. It is how we survive many terrible times in our history, but this child has bonded with a human. This is ... unprecedented." Zareth's lights flickered with new patterns. "A protection bond cannot be broken easily. It is meant to keep children safe when families are separated." Jake knelt down beside Pip and spoke softly to her. "That's your mother, little one. She's been looking for you. She loves you very much." Pip looked at Zareth, then back at Jake. She made questioning sounds. "It's okay," Jake told her. "You can go to her. I'll still be here." But when Pip tried to take a step toward her mother, she immediately ran back to Jake and grabbed his hand. She was crying now, musical sounds that made Jake's heart ache. "She is afraid that if she goes to her mother, she will lose her protector," Elder Vox explained. "The bond makes her believe that her survival depends on staying close to you." Zareth's lights had become very dim. "What can we do? I cannot force my child to come with me if it will hurt her." Jake looked at the little girl clinging to his hand, then at her mother standing there with such sadness in her eyes. This was not how things were supposed to go. The child should be happy to see her family. "There might be a way," Elder Vox said slowly, "but it is something that has never been done before." "What kind of way?" Colonel Hayes asked. "In the ancient times, when protection bonds formed between our people and other species, there was a ceremony, a ritual that could make the bond permanent and include the original family, but it would mean the human would become part of our family structure." Jake felt everyone's eyes on him. "What exactly does that mean?" "It would mean accepting a life bond with both child and mother. You would become Pip's permanent protector, with all the responsibilities that brings. You would also gain certain abilities that would help you care for her." Zareth stepped forward. "Human Jake Morrison, you have already saved my child's life. Now I ask you to consider saving her heart as well. She needs both her birth family and her chosen protector." Jake looked down at Pip, who was watching him with those big silver eyes. He thought about his life as a soldier, his duty to his unit, his plans for after the war. Then he thought about leaving this little girl who trusted him completely. "If I accept this bond," Jake said carefully, "what happens to my military service, my life as a human?" "You would become something new," Elder Vox H said. "Not fully human, not fully Cathani, but a bridge between both peoples. You would live longer, gain empathic abilities, and be able to understand our technology. But you would also be bound to protect Pip for the rest of her life." Colonel Hayes looked worried. "Morrison, you don't have to decide this right now. This is a big choice." Jake knelt down and looked into Pip's eyes. What do you think, little one? Do you want me to be your protector forever? Pip made happy sounds and threw her small arms around Jake's neck. Her skin blazed with bright lights, and Jake felt that warm feeling in his chest grow stronger. Zeroth stepped closer. I can see the bond is strong. If you accept, you would not just be Pip's protector. You would be family. My family. Jake stood up slowly, still holding Pip. He looked at her mother, then at the ancient elder, then at his own commanding officer. This was not just about one little girl anymore. This was about building bridges between species, about finding new ways to protect the innocent. I need to think about this, Jake said finally. But I won't abandon Pip. Whatever I decide, I'll make sure she's safe and loved. Elder Vox nodded approvingly. Wisdom and compassion together. Perhaps there is hope for both our peoples. As the meeting ended and both groups prepared to leave, Jake felt the weight of an impossible choice settling on his shoulders. But when he looked down at Pip, who was holding his hand and humming softly to herself, he realized that maybe the choice had already been made the moment he decided to pull her from the rubble. Some bonds were stronger than duty, stronger than species, stronger than the fear of the unknown. Jake sat on the edge of his hospital bed, watching Pip play with some small toys that Dr. Walsh had found for her. She was building little towers with blocks, then knocking them down and giggling. It was the first time he had heard her laugh, and the sound made him smile despite his heavy thoughts. 3 days had passed since the meeting with the Cathani. 3 days of thinking about the impossible choice he had to make: accept a life bond and leave his human life behind, or refuse and possibly hurt Pip forever. You look like someone stole your favorite meal, Dr. Walsh said as he sat down in a chair next to Jake's bed. Just thinking, Jake replied. About the bond? Jake nodded. Kevin, what would you do if you were me? Dr. Walsh was quiet for a moment, watching Pip stack her blocks. I've been a doctor for 15 years, Jake. I've seen a lot of children hurt by war, but I've never seen anything like what that little girl went through, or how she recovered because of you. That doesn't answer my question. Maybe because there isn't a right answer. You're being asked to choose between your duty as a soldier and your heart as a human being. Jake looked at Pip, who had abandoned her blocks and was now trying to braid the loose threads from her blanket. Colonel Hayes thinks I should refuse. She says the military needs soldiers like me. And what do you think? I think about what happens to Pip if I say no. Will she be okay? Will she be able to live a normal life with her mother? Or will she always feel abandoned? Dr. Walsh leaned forward. Jake, I need to tell you something. I've been studying Pip's medical scans since she got here. The bond she formed with you isn't just emotional, it's physical too. What do you mean? Her brain activity changes when you're near. Her heart rate becomes more stable. Even her healing has been faster because of your presence. If you leave, it won't just make her sad. It could actually make her sick. Jake felt his stomach drop. How sick? I don't know for sure. But Elder Vox sent some information about protection bonds through the communication channel. In some cases, breaking the bond can cause depression, loss of appetite, and failure to develop normally. In the worst cases, the child can just fade away. Jake put his head in his hands. So I don't really have a choice at all. You always have a choice, Jake. But now you know what all the options really mean. The tent flap opened, and Colonel Hayes walked in. She looked tired, and Jake noticed new lines around her eyes. Morrison, we need to talk, she said. Dr. Walsh stood up. I'll give you some privacy. He left, but not before giving Jake an encouraging pat on the shoulder. Colonel Hayes sat down and looked at Pip, who was now trying to teach her stuffed animal how to stack blocks. She's gotten comfortable here, the colonel observed. Yes, ma'am, she's a smart kid. She learns fast. The Cathani delegation is asking for an answer. Morrison, they can't wait much longer. Their people are scattered across the planet, hiding from Sindari patrols. They need to know if they can count on an alliance with us. An alliance. If you accept a life bond, you become more than just Pip's protector. You become a symbol of cooperation between our species. The Cathani are offering to share their technology and fight alongside us against the Sindari. Jake felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier. So it's not just about Pip anymore. It's about the whole war. I won't lie to you, Morrison. Your decision could change everything. But I also won't order you to sacrifice your life for politics. Jake was quiet for a long moment. What would happen to my military career if I accept? You would be discharged from active duty, but you would become our official liaison to the cathedral. It would be a new kind of service, but still service. Pip looked up from her toys and crawled over to Jake. She climbed onto his lap and settled against his chest, making soft, happy sounds. Jake wrapped his arms around her automatically. She trusts you completely, Colonel Hayes said softly. I've never seen anything like it. She saved my life too. You know, Jake said. When I was carrying her back to our lines, I almost gave up. I was hurt and tired and ready to quit. But every time I looked at her, I found the strength to keep going. That's what love does, Morrison. Real love makes us stronger than we ever thought we could be. Jake looked down at Pip, who had fallen asleep in his arms. Her skin glowed softly, and her breathing was peaceful and steady. If I accept the bond, what exactly would happen to me? Elder Voxes said I would gain abilities. From what we understand, you would develop empathic abilities that would help you understand Pip's needs. You would also live much longer, maybe hundreds of years, and you would be able to interface with Cathini technology. And the responsibility, you would be bound to protect Pip until she's fully grown by their standards. That's about 40 human years. After that, the bond becomes more like a family connection. You would always be important to each other, but she wouldn't need constant protection. Jake thought about 40 years, most of his life dedicated to keeping one little girl safe. It sounded overwhelming, but when he looked at Pip sleeping peacefully in his arms, it also felt right. There's something else, Colonel Hayes said. We intercepted some Sindari communications. They're planning a major offensive against both human and Cathani positions. If we're going to survive this war, we need allies. You're saying my choice could help save lives. I'm saying that sometimes one person's decision can change the course of history. You already proved that when you saved Pip in the first place. The tent flap opened again, and Private Danny Brooks from Jake's unit peeked in. Sorry to interrupt, Colonel, but the guys wanted me to give this to Sergeant Morrison. Danny handed Jake a small wrapped package. It's from the whole squad, he said with a grin. Jake opened the package carefully, trying not to wake Pip. Inside was a small metal pendant on a chain. It was shaped like a shield with the words Protector engraved on it. We figured no matter what you decide, you're already the best protector we know, Danny said. The little girl is lucky to have you. After Danny left, Jake held the pendant up to the light. It was simple but well made, clearly crafted with care. Your men respect your choice, Colonel Hayes said. Whatever you decide. Jake fastened the chain around his neck. The pendant felt warm against his chest, right next to where Pip was sleeping. I keep thinking about what my grandmother used to tell me, Jake said. She said that sometimes God puts people in our path not because we need them, but because they need us. Smart woman. She also said that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day to put someone else's needs before your own. Jake looked at Colonel Hayes. I've been thinking about this wrong. I keep seeing it as giving up my life, but maybe it's really about choosing a different kind of life. What do you mean? I became a soldier to protect people, to keep the innocent safe from those who would hurt them. How is this any different? It's just protecting one person instead of many. Pip stirred in Jake's arms and opened her eyes. She saw him looking at her. She smiled and made happy musical sounds. Her skin brightened with warm golden light. She needs me, Jake said simply, and maybe I need her too. Colonel Hayes stood up. So you've made your decision. Jake nodded slowly. I accept the life bond. I'll become Pip's protector. Are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back. Jake looked down at the little girl who had changed his life. Some choices aren't about going back, Colonel. They're about going forward to something better. Colonel Hayes smiled. I'll contact a Cathani delegation. The ceremony can happen tomorrow. As she left the tent, Jake held Pip closer and whispered, Don't worry, little one. I'm not going anywhere. We're family now. Pip's lights pulsed brighter, and Jake felt that warm feeling in his chest grow stronger. Tomorrow, everything would change. But for the first time since this all began, Jake felt completely at peace with his choice. The ceremony took place at dawn in the crystal formations where they had first met. Jake stood in the center of a circle made of smooth white stones, holding Pip's hand. Around them, both humans and Cathani watched in silence as Elder Vox prepared the ancient ritual. Jake had never seen anything like the crystals that Elder Vox H carried. They were clear as glass, but filled with swirling lights that seemed to move on their own. When the old Cathani held them up to the morning sun, rainbows danced across everyone's faces. These crystals have been used for bonding ceremonies for thousands of years, Elder Vox explained through the translator. They will create a connection between your mind and Pip's that will last for your lifetime. Pip looked up at Jake with her big silver eyes. She seemed excited rather than scared, and her skin glowed with soft golden light. She had been chattering in her musical language all morning, and while Jake couldn't understand the words, her happy tone made him smile. Zareth stood nearby, watching her daughter with joy and sadness mixed together. "Are you ready, Jake Morrison?" she asked. "Once the bond is complete, you will be as much Pip's parent as I am." "I'm ready," Jake said, and he meant it. He had spent all night thinking about his choice, and every time he looked at Pip, he knew it was the right one. Elder Vox began to sing in the ancient Cathini language. His voice was deep and rich, and the crystals in his hands began to glow brighter. Other Cathani joined in the song, creating harmonies that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. "Place your hand on the largest crystal," Elder Vox instructed Jake. "Pip will place hers on the other side. The crystal will do the rest." Jake reached out and put his palm against the warm surface of the crystal. Pip put her small hand on the opposite side, and immediately the crystal blazed with brilliant light. Jake felt a tingling sensation run up his arm and through his whole body. Suddenly, Jake could feel Pip's emotions as clearly as his own. Her excitement, her love, her complete trust in him flowed through his mind like warm water. But there was something else, too. He could sense her memories of being trapped under the rubble, her fear and pain, and then the moment when she first saw him and felt safe. The connection worked both ways. Pip's eyes widened as she felt Jake's feelings, too. His determination to protect her, his worry about making the right choice, and most importantly, his growing love for her as if she were his own child. "The bond is forming," Elder Vox said with wonder in his voice. "I can see the connection taking hold." Jake felt changes happening in his body. His senses became sharper. He could hear conversations happening far away, could smell things he had never noticed before. But the biggest change was in his mind. He could suddenly understand some of the Cathini words without the translator. Pip made happy sounds and hugged Jake's leg. When she spoke, Jake understood her perfectly, even though she was speaking in her own language. "Papa Jake," she said. "You're really my Papa Jake now." Jake knelt down and hugged her tight. "Yes, little one. I'm your Papa Jake forever." Zareth stepped forward, tears of light streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said to Jake. "You have given my daughter something I could not. You have given her a protector who chose her freely." But before anyone could respond, the sound of engines filled the air. Several vehicles were approaching fast from the direction of the human base. Jake recognized the urgent way they were driving. Something was wrong. Colonel Hayes jumped out of the lead vehicle before it had completely stopped. "We have a problem," she called out. "The Sindari have launched their major offensive. They're hitting both oppositions and the Cathini settlements simultaneously." Commander Thelos, the Cathini military leader, stepped forward. "How many ships? Our scouts count at least 50 attack vessels and twice that many ground units. They're trying to wipe out both our species at once." Elder Vox looked grim. "They fear an alliance between us. They strike now to prevent it." Jake felt Pip's fear through their new bond. She pressed close to his side, and he put a protective arm around her. "What do? "We fight together," Zareth said firmly. "My people have defensive technology that your weapons cannot penetrate, but you have tactics and firepower we lack." Colonel Hayes nodded. "A joint defense, but we'll need someone who can coordinate between both forces, someone who understands both sides." Everyone looked at Jake. He was still getting used to the new feelings and abilities from the bond, but he could sense what they were thinking. "Me," he said. You want me to help coordinate the battle? You're the only one who can communicate perfectly with both species now, Commander Thelos pointed out. The bond gives you empathic abilities that will let you understand our battle strategies. Instantly, Jake looked down at Pip. The idea of going into battle so soon after promising to protect her seemed wrong. But through their bond, he could feel her emotions. She wasn't just scared for herself. She was scared for all her people and for the humans who had become friends. Papa Jake, Pip said in her musical language, "You have to help everyone stay safe." Dr. Walsh, who had come with Colonel Hayes, stepped forward. "Jake, if you're going to coordinate this battle, Pip needs to be somewhere completely safe." The Crystal Caves, Zareth suggested. They are deep underground and protected by natural barriers. I will take her there with the other children and elders. Jake knelt down to Pip's level. Through their bond, he could feel her understanding of what was about to happen. She was scared, but she was also proud of him. "I have to go help stop the bad people," Jake told her. "But I promise I'll come back to you." Pip hugged him tight. "I know you will, Papa Jake. I can feel it in here." She pointed to her heart. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Jake found himself in the Joint Command Center, a hastily set up base where human and Kethany officers worked side by side. His new empathic abilities let him understand the Kethany battle plans instantly, while his military training helped him suggest tactical improvements. The Kethany had shield technology that could protect human ground troops, while human weapons could penetrate Sindori armor that Kethani energy weapons couldn't touch. Together, they created defensive strategies that neither species could have managed alone. Sindari forces are approaching Sector 7. A human radio operator called out. Jake closed his eyes and reached out with his new senses. He could feel the Kethani defenders in that area, could sense their positions and their fear. "Tell Lieutenant Carter to move his unit 200 meters north," he said. "The Kethani shields will cover them there, and they'll have a clear shot at the Sindari vehicles." The battle raged for 3 days. Jake barely slept, coordinating attacks and defenses across multiple fronts. Through his bond with Pip, he could feel her safe in the Crystal Caves, and her calm presence helped him stay focused even in the worst moments of fighting. When the last Sindari ship finally retreated, Jake felt the exhaustion hit him all at once. But there was something else, too. Through the empathic network he had helped create, he could feel the joy and relief of both human and Kethani soldiers. "We did it," Colonel Hayes said. Now General Hayes, after her promotion during the battle, "The Sindari are retreating from this entire sector. They will not return." Commander Thelos agreed. They have learned that humans and Kethany together are stronger than either alone. Jake left the command center and traveled to the Crystal Caves to get Pip. When he arrived, she ran into his arms with a happy cry. Through their bond, she had felt his victory and his relief. "Papa Jake, you kept everyone safe." "We all kept everyone safe," Jake corrected. "Humans and Kethani together." 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the new Joint Research Station, watching Pip play with both human and Kethani children in the garden below. The war was over, but the alliance they had built was just beginning. Dr. Walsh approached with a data pad. "The medical exchange program is working better than we hoped. Kethany healing techniques are helping our wounded soldiers recover twice as fast." Jake nodded, but his attention was on Pip. She was teaching a human boy how to make his toy glow the way Kethani children could make their skin glow. The boy couldn't do it, but he was laughing as he tried. "You know," Dr. Walsh said, "what you did changed everything. Not just the war, but how both our species see the universe." Jake thought about that day in the ruins when he first heard Pip crying. He had just wanted to save one scared child. He never imagined it would lead to an alliance that would change both their worlds. Pip looked up and waved at him through the window. Her skin flickered with happy golden lights, and through their bond, Jake felt her love and contentment. She was safe, she was loved, and she was helping to build a future where no child would have to be scared and alone in a war zone. Sometimes Jake realized the most important battles weren't fought with weapons. They were fought with the simple decision to choose love over fear, to protect the innocent no matter what the cost, and to believe that different species could become family. That was the real power of humanity. not their strength or their technology, but their ability to love beyond the boundaries others thought impossible.